passion of mine. And so right now, just with the podcast, that's what I'm focusing on is just, I want to find women who are either entrepreneurs or aspiring entrepreneurs and wanting to start a business or already have one. And I want to just dive in. I want to like find out like what, like, how did you get there? You know, what did you do to create this business? And like, how did your journey lead you here? You know, because
Yeah.
so many people are in this feeling of like, they want something more with their lives, but they don't know how, like what actually to do to get there. And so really digging in with women who have figured it out, at least figured out their current stage, right? I mean, it's all figuring it out along the journey, but like they figured it out enough to like say, I'm in business, like this is my business and this is my life. And it's just so fun and fascinating. And I think also like what we sometimes don't talk about is like the failures before the success, like what failures happen, like what did you have to stumble through to get there, because so much of that um is just not seen. And so people feel like it's just like this perfect, you know, they just decided they wanted to do this and then it just all happened, and that's not the case. So
Right.
I would love for
Totally.
you to just, yeah, just like share, let us know, like introduce yourself, tell us who you are and kind of what you're doing, what you're working on right now.
Cool. My name is Jaden, and right now I love that you started. You're like people who have figured it out up until now, people who have figured it out for now, because as soon as you said who have figured it out, I'm like, oh, that's not me. And I know that so many people can relate because nobody has it figured out. But I work right now as a personal transformation coach and mentor. I work with women around aligning to their highest purpose and alignment in life. So I run 2 group coaching programs and really work with groups and women to do that. It's really just about figuring out, who am I? What do I want to do? How can I show up in the world in a way that is true, in the way that makes sense to me, under the premise that when we're connected to the truth of who we are and we speak on that, we advocate for that, we stand in that and move in that, that's where we figure out, what do I want to do? What does that look like? And the data shows, and the way I coach under this premise is that when you actually do the things that make you happy, when you do the things that make you feel good and aligned, you actually make more money, you're happier, you age better. So it's really aligning and uncovering. Like, we all know who we are, we all know what we want, but are we willing to show up for that every day is a different story. So that's a lot of the work that I do. And it's a super trauma informed approach. So we do mindset work, we do somatic work, and we also go back and find the root cause. Where are we holding ourselves back? Why am I so successful but still can't make any money? Like, what is that coming from? And actually somatically releasing that.
Oh, it's beautiful work. I love that so much. And I'm really coming to this realization just here recently, just about even whenever you just fully allow yourself to just be yourself, what that opens for you. I feel like it opens this whole new world. It's like you're seeing in full color, like you didn't see the world this way before. And now you're like, wow. And it's like blocking out so much of the voices, you know, it's like blocking out the negative voices, the self-sabotage and the comparison and all of that stuff when you're just able to step into that. So I love that so much. Okay, so tell me, how did you get into this world of coaching? Like, what were you doing before? How did you discover it? Take us back.
Okay. All the way back. So, I never know where to start because I kind of came out of the womb this way. And it's funny when you were just saying like, oh, when we start to be our true selves, my mind is like, I came out of the womb that way. It's my gift that I have of I've always been. People ask, they're like, did you go through some sort of an awakening that now you're so honest? Like, I really came out that way. And so interesting because I can
Yeah,
look back at my whole life and go, I always stood for that. I never, it's not that I never worried or I never had any like fears around it, but I always knew that what I wanted and what I felt was more important than anybody in the room. It was more important than keeping a friendship. Like I always knew that my truth mattered more than the relationship or my truth mattered more than the situation.
I love that. And that's such a gift. And I'm wondering, like, tell me about your childhood.
Yeah. It's so funny. I just had this memory as I was saying that of my first job when I was 14. I was changing the trash, like the trash can, the garbage bag, and I didn't secure it enough. So when the manager of this ice cream shop I was working at went to go fix the trash can that I poorly did, she rolled her ankle or something and they fired me. And I was 14. This was my first job and they fired me. And I said, no, that's ridiculous. I was like, no, that's ridiculous. I'm
Yeah.
not being fired. And I didn't. And I came back and I kept working there. So my childhood, I grew up in the middle of the woods and my dad was an entrepreneur. My mom was also an entrepreneur. She was kind of running her own business. My dad runs his own. He's a general contractor, so he works in construction. And I really grew up in the middle of the woods in my house with these mantras and reminders that I can really do whatever I wanted. So I'm like a girl, right, in the middle of the woods. It was like I had tools. I was taught how to build things. It was sort of, these aren't all good beliefs, but it was like nobody can do anything for you. You can do it yourself. And I was really taught to do things for myself. And one thing that I think was really big in my childhood was my dad demonstrated for me that no matter who somebody was, whether they were really successful or they were the president or they were a celebrity or they were someone who had made a name for themselves in my town, it did not matter. It was all about who they were as a person. And I remember my dad would always just really look at people as who they are. So the person who was wildly unpopular in my school, I remember my dad always thought she was so cool because she was always smiling. And then the person who everybody liked and looked up to, he would look at just like anybody else. And that was really instilled in me at a young age. So I never looked at anybody as better or worse. I just looked at people like people. And I think that was a big, huge thing. So I always looked at people as people, no matter who they were, what they did. And entrepreneurship was instilled in me at a young age. So that was my conditioning as a child, which is pretty
That's
cool.
amazing. Yeah, that's so cool. And so I have 3 kids. And so I'm always just like trying to just be really like cautious and conscious of what I'm saying and how I'm speaking to them and allowing them to fully, be their own self,
Mm,
without like putting any, oh, be a good girl. We always hear like be good. And I'm like, and it's just like I catch myself. I'm like, "Mm, I don't want, them to have these like beliefs instilled in them. Like, I have to be a good girl. I have to be, quiet, or I have to be this or that. I want them to fully embrace who they are. And so I love hearing that. And it just like, it helps me to learn what can I do differently, than maybe my my family did growing up to make me think that I had to fit in this one certain box. And I feel like a lot of like I am kind of different in that way of like just still doing my own thing, doing my own path. But I feel like just here recently, I'm stepping into it even more to where
mm.
like and just blocking out like the comparison game and blocking out a lot of the things that maybe have held me back before. But but yeah, from a young age, I realized that I could do whatever I put my mind to. And it was so funny because one of the first kind of like awakenings I had was in high school. And I was sitting in the bleachers at a football game with a friend. And I had always wanted to be a cheerleader, like a high school cheerleader. And I, did not grow up with money. So I didn't have like all of the training that all these other girls basically had from when they were young. And they had been in cheerleading for forever. And I just looked at the field and I was like, next year I'm going to be on the team. And I like said it. And then I put it was in my mind and I had this goal and I worked that year and I made the team. And that
Amazing.
was one of my things that I'm like, okay, I proved to myself in that moment that like, if I say I can do it, I can do it. And I work towards it and I can do whatever I put my mind to.
Yeah, I love
So
that. That's such a good thing too. And that another piece of my childhood, like I think a big thing I got was if I said something, they were like, yeah, sure. Or you can do
yeah,
it. Like, yeah, why not? Like there really are no limits. It's just conditioning and stories. So I love
yes.
I love that. And my it's so funny because no matter what you do as a parent, like I work in right this trauma informed world, and whether it's good or bad, it's going to affect you. And as a child, I was not allowed to be a cheerleader. It was the only thing I wasn't allowed to do because my dad wanted me to be the one playing the game. And it's funny because as an adult now, that shows up in it's hard for me to actually like put my ego aside and support people because as a kid it was like you have to be the one on the field, the one cheering on is wrong. So no matter how much anyone tries, it's gonna mess someone up somewhere down the line, which
Yeah.
is a beautiful reality.
Yeah, but that also kind of like gives me a little bit of relief, because it's like I'm doing the best I can and I don't want to
Right.
worry about every little thing. And I also think it's more important for as a parent to love yourself
Mhm.
and give yourself grace and not hide all of the things from your children, you know what I mean? Like emotions and showing them it's okay. Like this happened and I failed at this, or this is my struggle right now and I'm working through it. And like them seeing that, even if it's not the full picture, it's glimpses of, my mom's having a hard time right now and it's okay. And she's working through it and she's still being positive. She's still showing up. Like that is so important for them to see too.
So important. Like
So
so important. Yeah, problem solving and things being real, like problems being
mhm.
okay. We can work through things. Yeah.
Yeah. And
Uh,
allowing them to fail, not like
mhm.
fixing everything for them, not giving them all the answers. Like, okay, well, what would you have done differently next time? What will you do differently? And I think that that is so important too.
Yeah.
So
The kids are the ones teaching us. I like the parent, I don't have kids, but it's like the older generation, we think that we know everything and we don't. Like they're our teachers and can we let them teach us?
absolutely.
Because we've already messed ourselves up. They're
It's
like
so
a
true.
clean slate. Right.
It's so true. And it's like you can learn so much from children. And like
Mm.
part of me is like, oh, I want to go back to that place. Like, like what is my inner child like wanting me to do in this moment? It's
Yeah.
really fascinating. Okay.
Uh,
So tell me more about, okay, so how did you get into coaching? Like
yeah.
how did you know that that was like the path you should take?
Okay. Coaching. So my journey really looked like I could just give you a snapshot of my childhood. And then my journey really was, I was living that way my whole life, kind of driving my own life, leading the way, doing things. I worked a ton of jobs. I had 3 jobs by the time I graduated high school. I was convinced my guidance counselor, I guess, to let me leave school at 11:30 on work release. So I was essentially by the time I was graduating high school, I was hardly in school and I was working. I was super motivated on that end. And I went to college at the University of Vermont. And when I was in college, my past at this point, I had kind of been a wild sort of kid. I was like partying a lot, I was having fun. I had all these issues that I had created in my life, whether they were with family members or this or that. I didn't know at that point in my life that I could change the way that I felt and change the way that I reacted to things around me. So in college, I took an energy healing course to become an energy healing practitioner. And this was called Healing Touch. It's a lot of people think Reiki, but this was Healing Touch. They actually use it in hospitals in America. It's incredible. And I started doing Healing Touch. And when I was in that program, I realized that I could change the way I felt. And in that, I could change the way other people affected me. And up until that point, I was a little bit on the reactive side, a little bit moody, a little bit reactive, not a lot, but a little bit, enough that it bothered me. And I took this course and I was like, oh my God, people don't bother me anymore. I like this, it's all been me. So anyway, I had this realization for the first time in my life that you can actually change the way you feel. And it
Yeah.
was so crazy to me. And of course, like anything else in my life, I went all in and I was doing these classes, learning how to do healing touch. And I was doing it on all of my friends in college. We would be at the beach and I would be giving people energy work and my roommates. And anytime I could, helping people I was helping people clear through this energy work. And I loved it so much. I loved how immediate it was. I loved that people didn't believe in it. And then I would do it. And then they would be like, oh my God, what is this? So I started doing healing touch. I'm still at like phase 1 of the journey. I started doing healing touch. And then I let that ride out. Part of my journey, I ended up switching from engineering to entrepreneurship because I realized I wanted to work with people. So that was a piece. I was like, oh, I don't have to make money and then do what I want. I can do it the other way. So I had that mini awakening in college where I, left the safe major and went into the unknown. And then I got my yoga teacher training. So I became a yoga teacher, which even though I've hardly taught any yoga, oh my God, it taught me so much about how to stand in front of a room, how the whole yoga philosophy
Oh,
of,
that's cool.
all yoga taught me how to really see the good in other people, how to see people for people even more than I already was. So, energy healing, yoga, entrepreneurship. And then in that time when I was learning how to teach yoga, I was coaching snowboarding. So I had this spiritual mindset, yoga, energy healing side of me. And then I was on top of mountains with like 30 something year old women. They were my favorite to coach. So, like 30-year-old women whose boyfriend or husband, convinced them to go snowboarding, which I hate to say that out loud, but it was true that it happened. And I would be at the top of the mountain with them, mentally helping them go down a hill really fast for the first time ever in their life. And I would be lying if I said I was teaching them how to snowboard because I was up there teaching them the mindset and also teaching them how to feel empowered in themselves over whoever it was that convinced them to do it, like bringing them back in their
Oh,
own body, overcoming fear. So I was coaching the way I coach now, but in snowboarding. So that
that's
was
incredible.
huge. Yeah. So I coached snowboarding for a really long time, and all of my clients would say, you should be a psychiatrist or you should be a whatever buzzword came to mind about mindset. So I
Mhm.
knew I was already kind of doing it. I loved it. And that was a part of it. And then through this time of coaching snowboarding, I was starting businesses. I started a house flipping company. I flipped a house. I convinced people to lend me $200,000 to flip a house. I started a window washing company. Both of these were successful. So I'm mindset coaching and snowboarding. I'm starting businesses, blah, 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 blah. Fast forward, I want some security in my life because I'm tired of all the, unknown. So I got a 9 to 5, my first 9 to 5 that I ever got. And within half of a year, I was so unhappy. I no longer had the time to snowboard every day. I no longer had the time to skateboard every day. I no longer had my time in the morning. I felt physically not good because I was sitting all day, and I just spiraled into not a happy
Mhm.
place. I didn't have money, even though I had a safe job. It like the things weren't adding up for me. And when I was at that job, I could talk about that for 20 hours, but I'll just leave it at that for now. I had this one week where 5 different people asked me, Jaden, what are you doing at this time? I'm going through a major life decision. Can you pencil out time in your schedule to help me? And at that moment, I realized that that was what I was supposed to be doing. And that started the journey of this, was that moment.
Wow, that's awesome. Okay, so what did you do after that? Did you quit the job right away? Did you make a plan? Like, how did you pivot
Okay.
into the 9 to 5 into fully going into this business?
Right. Because we all know it didn't just happen.
Right?
And then here I am. I'm so happy. It's done. Um, yeah, great question. So I realized I wanted to be a coach, be a life coach. I didn't know what that meant. I had Instagram, but it wasn't downloaded on my phone. At this point in my life, I had only posted like one photo with me and my friend. I think there was a photo of a energy healing candle that I posted. I was not on social media. So I was living in rural Vermont and I just Googled life coach certification. I didn't know anybody who did it. I had no idea how much money you could make or what it meant or how you would run the business. I thought, oh, maybe I can just make a little bit less money than a therapist because I'm tired of going to school. And that'll be that. And it'll be great. So I Googled life coaching certification and I did one. And I forget how much it was. I think it was like $2,000, which is not a lot for anybody who has been in the coaching world, where things are pretty usually on the higher end. So I think it was
Yeah.
$2,000, which was a ton to me at the time. And I barely learned anything. I barely learned anything. But what I
Oh,
did get was a little bit of practice, the confidence behind having a certificate in holistic life coaching. I went through the whole 6 month program. So I probably learned a lot, but I didn't come out of it like super confident in my craft. So
yeah. Like,
I did a
okay, now I'm ready. Yeah.
here I am, hire me. Yeah, I just kind of learned a few basic things. So I did that. And then I realized, oh, I still don't know what I'm doing, or I don't know how to run a business. And I'm still working my job at this point. And I was like doing this while I was actually, I think I started the certification right around like the very beginning of my job. So it was kind of at the same time I started my
Mhm.
job. I knew I wanted to coach, which we always know what we want and then we go against it. That's how we roll as humans. So I did that. And then that didn't really do, I didn't get, I didn't have any clients. I didn't have a business. I just had the certification. And then I took a business, life or a coaching business. I hired a business coach
Mm.
and I did a group program. I hired a business coach. And at this time, I actually ended up getting this is great because, as everyone can hear, I'm going against my desires. I'm working a 9 to 5, even though I don't want to. I am going against everything I want. So it is to no surprise that I end up with 2 back-to-back head injuries from snowboarding. I have like crippling anxiety. I have vertigo. Like everything's burning to the ground because I'm going against what I want.
Yeah.
So, so I hire this business coach and I have all these, head like concussions, anxiety, all this stuff. And I went through the program anyway, and I learned a little bit about how to build a business from from that. I think I realized I was like, okay, I'm going to start doing some master classes. I'm going to start doing some coaching sessions and got out of that. And I still didn't have a business. See how it works.
Yeah.
And then I hired that coach one-on-one, and I paid her $6,000. I couldn't even afford to heat my house, for everybody listening. I literally couldn't. I still remember what it felt like to sit on the cold plywood floors, because I didn't even have flooring. I owned the house, didn't even have flooring. Every time the propane tank went out, it felt like the world was ending, because I remember going into HR and being like, I need a bonus because I can't afford to heat my house. And I'm working on $1 million projects for you guys. So I paid this coach $6,000, and I decided that I was just going to go all in, and I was going to try, because I saw other people doing it. At this point, I had downloaded Instagram. I got up to date. I saw what was happening. And this one friend who I had been connected with for a while, she was doing it in a different way, but I saw her. So I had downloaded some information that it was possible for me. And I decided that I was going to do whatever it took, no matter what. And I eventually left that job before I was making enough money. And instead of doing both, I sold my house that I was living in and gave myself enough money to live for 1 year, or like a quarter of a year, because I ended up moving to Los Angeles. So I gave myself enough money to sort of make it through a year, and said, I was really, I wouldn't say privileged to be in that situation. Like, I'd put myself in that situation by
Yeah.
flipping a house, buying another one. Like, that was such a big journey. So I was lucky enough that when I was 20 or 21, I wanted to own a house. So I had put myself in that situation that I worked really hard for, like,
Yeah.
8 months of physical labor to get to that place. But I sold my house and gave myself cushion for a year. And at that point, I just did everything that it took, which was a lot of putting myself out there, trying things feeling weird and not aligned, doing something else, hiring other people, realizing, oh, I've hired too many people. I need to go within. Oh, now it's time to hire people again. Like, this whole journey of really understanding what the heck I wanted, what I was even doing, why I was doing it, and what I wanted my business to feel like. And I showed up for it every day,
That's
even when it
incredible.
felt like it was not working, because there were many months where I made no money, like
Mhm.
none, like $0. A lot of months where I made no money. Yeah.
Yeah. So looking back, what advice would you give yourself, or what advice would you give someone out there that's maybe, in that moment of about to jump and go all in? Is there anything you would tell them, or
Honestly, from what I would tell them, somebody who's about to jump and go all in, is something that I've learned is, when we are in survival, when we're not making money, when we're not in our wholeness or not in our survival, we don't really do anything right. Right. It's like we're putting this, that's not true, but we put this unnecessary pressure on our nervous system. We want
Mhm.
to feel safe and comfortable before anything. So I think one piece of advice, and I'll say two things about this, but one piece of advice I would give is to, there's no shame in keeping a part-time job in the beginning. And I will say that because there's no need to stretch yourself for the sake of your business.
Yeah.
And also, there's this piece for me, but I'm crazy. Like, I lived out of my van. I started businesses. I didn't care if I ended up on the side of the road. Like, that's cool for me. But so there's this part of sometimes being in that survival instinct really kicks in for us. So I think when you're starting out is to really look at yourself and go, what would support me? Is it
Mhm.
having a financial cushion, or is that financial cushion or that job that very thing that's getting in my way? And when you decide, am I going to go all in or am I going to quit my job, to check in with yourself maybe once a month and go, is this supporting me? Am I more energized or am I more freaked out? And just to
Mhm.
really be honest with yourself and have grace with yourself in the process, knowing that there is no timeline, there's no right way to do it. So I would give that advice about whether or not you're like leaving a job, and support, support, support. You cannot do it alone. You can do it alone. Why would you want to? Like,
Yeah.
hire mentors, get in a community, find something that inspires you to show up for
Mhm.
every day. And that could be investing like thousands and thousands of dollars in a mentor, or I am in a group text message chat with a few people, and every day we say what we're grateful for and what our desire is for the day. So whatever you do, whether it's free or $30,000, give yourself something to show up for every
Yeah.
day.
Oh, I love that. Oh, that's such good advice. Um, okay, what are you currently working on?
Oh my gosh. Everything. I'm working on everything all the time. So in my business right now, I have a program that I run a few times a year called Exponential Alignment, and that's my main piece of work. And so I wouldn't say I'm working on that, I'm doing that. And what
Mhm.
I'm working on right now is I'm actually two things. What am I working on? I'm working on so much. Two of the main things is I'm actually starting my own podcast.
Yay.
The only thing I'm hung up on is the name. So I am fully there. So my podcast is coming out soon, which I'm really, 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 really excited about. And the other thing I'm working on is just like slowing down
Mhm.
in my life. I went into the personal development aisle in Barnes and Noble,
Mhm.
where there's like all the self-help books.
Yes.
And I bought a book called Grounded, A Guide to Slow Living.
Mm.
And I realized in that moment that I don't really need anything else right now besides to slow down and connect to myself and connect to what I want. So I'm really working on slowing down, being in community more. And in the future, that might look like more in person experiences like
Mhm.
retreats or workshops and things around the world and where I live. So that's kind of what I'm working on.
I love that. And tell everyone where they can connect with you.
Yeah, so I mainly hang out now. I got with the times. I'm mainly on Instagram. So you can find me on Instagram. My handle is Jaden B. Hummel. And I post on there about offerings and stuff like that. You could also check out my website, but my website's on my Instagram. So I would just head to Instagram first. And I have some free resources on there if you kind of want to get a taste. I do free masterclasses here and there. And then I also share about my incredible programs.
That's amazing. Thank you. And I will
Yeah.
link everything in the show notes so everyone can find you.